This is the final word. Australia, South Africa, women's test daily from the WACA. Not that we're at the WACA, but Geoff Lemon and Bharat Sundaresan watching on from a distance today. Couldn't be there. Probably best that we weren't because it was 43 degrees and it didn't look like a whole lot of fun, even for the people watching on, let alone the ones playing. But the show's brought to you by CBUS Super, by the way. You, Bharat, are going to tell me all about the day's play in the space of 30 seconds.
Well, a lot happened, so I will struggle to put it in 30 seconds, but here we go. Darcie Brown strikes with the new ball, 2 back-to-back wickets, and then Annabel Sutherland runs through the middle order. Darcie Brown returns, takes 5 wickets. South Africa blown away for 76. Mainly because of a last wicket partnership, but then Australia start poorly, 3 for 12. They're in all sorts of trouble. Alyssa Healy plays probably her best test innings, but falls one short of 100, falls for 99. Beth Mooney does what she does, but also falls short 20 runs or 20 odd runs of 100. Australia are 175 ahead. All that in just today's play.
There we go. That was pretty much everything, and that felt like it just about 30 seconds. I like it. It was a Beth Mooney digging Australia out of trouble day again. Like, how many times can she do that job? It was a remarkable story with Healy at the end that we'll come to probably in about 10 minutes' time, and maybe some of that in the Hall of Fame as well. But let's start at the beginning. A very good place to start. It was. I mean, I felt. For South Africa today, you've got this South African women's team. They played a test against England. Was it last year? About a year ago. They played. The one before that was in 2014. Pretty sure Marizanne Kapp's the only remaining player from that 2014 Test match. Although Dana van Niekerk might come back and play again for the South African national team. But they've played 13 Test matches in total, dating back to 1960. At 1960 for those 13 games. And there's no red ball domestic cricket in South Africa, obviously, because there isn't anywhere else either. To come in to this situation and be plonked into a test and be expected to perform, this has always been the dilemma with women's test cricket, that if it's not adequately supported before you play the test matches, then how can you expect players to be up to the standard once they do play test cricket? And they just looked overawed today, South Africa. They won the toss. They lost the toss, rather. They got asked to bat first. Initially I thought that might have been in their best interest because it was so hot today and it was scheduled to be, well, the forecast is that it would be cooler on day 2. So the thought was, if you can bat through day 1 and make the other team bowl all day, and then you get to bowl when it's 29 instead of 43, well, then that'll be in your best interest. But they fell apart. They were pretty much gone by lunch, 8 down by the lunch break. And there was some good bowling from Australia, but it wasn't absolutely unplayable bowling. It just looked like there were a lot of loose shots outside off stump. Everybody was feeding the cordon, and the South Africans looked like a team who were overwhelmed by the occasion.
Overwhelmed, and also like a team who were trying to learn on the job, right? The red ball was shiny and it was swinging around quite a bit to start with. And at many levels, you felt like they were stuck in between, we'll play what we know, or we'll play the way we know to play. But then, this is test cricket. But this is played over 4 days. We need to play it differently. And I thought Chloe Tryon's innings kind of summed it up. I mean, it's not like she hung around for too long, but generally we've seen when she's out there, she plays her shots, but she was around for 17 balls. And in that space, she saw a lot of wickets fall at the other end as well. And it's only after they were 7 down or so, or 6 down, she says, I need to play some shots. And she didn't commit to that drive, did she? That kind of summed up South Africa for me. But even before we got here, I don't know whether even Australia thought the pitch would favor the fast bowlers as much as it did. Not only as the stats for this season at the WACA supported spinners. Corey Rochichelli obviously has been leading the wicket-taking chart for the Western Australia in the Shield. But Australia brought back Sophie Molyneux and they picked 3 spinners, and they didn't even have to go to spin, did they? So it was just all seam, and the ball was jagging around. Like you said, there was some really good bowling. Darcie Brown was quick, should have had a wicket, and then does get the wicket in her first over, and then gets another one soon after. Annabel Sutherland was hooping it around. Ellyse Perry was doing the same. So if it came Garth for that matter. So I think,
more than any of them.
All of them, right? Like, yeah, and so maybe that, so even that didn't go according to predictions, right? Like, so maybe South Africa or even Australia would have felt, okay, put them in, but we have the bowling depth. And, I think one of them spoke during the break, and that's exactly what they said. I think one of their coaches spoke and said, we just backed our depth to get the job done. And I guess in a 4-day test as well, if you want to force a result, it's easier to do it this way, right? Put the opposition in, the inexperienced team in, bowl them out the way Australia have, and then you can dictate terms like Australia have done.
Yeah, absolutely dictating terms by the time they got to stumps, although it didn't look like that way for a while. To go through the early stuff, this was quite interesting. So Beth Mooney drops a catch off Annika Bosch, and then Alyssa Healy takes one a couple of balls later. Then Alyssa Healy drops a catch off Laura Woolvart, and then Beth Mooney takes Woolvart the very next ball, but it's in the next over. So poor Kim Garth, who bowled beautifully off the top, had the ball hooping away and then was getting to land on the seam and angle back in, had one go just over the stumps. She gets the catch dropped that Darcie Brown picks up the first ball of the next over, and Darcie Brown has a catch dropped and then takes a wicket herself a couple of balls later. So Darcie Brown cleans up both of them. Tasman Brits batted for a long time with Ellyse, faced 48 balls but only made 5. And then Annabel Sutherland comes on and she gets a vicious one to cut back in. Very good review from the Australians too, because it hit her just in line with the off stump. I think the umpire maybe thought outside the line and maybe a bit high, but it was going on to hit the top of middle. The review works. Very next ball, Sutherland goes through Delmi Tucker, who just poked fairly half-heartedly at one and edged it back onto her stumps. And then Ellyse, who was the only batter who looked comfortable out there, made 26, pushed the ball around, just picked up singles, only hit one boundary, but she makes 26, and then she's out to a bad shot, having a bigger drive than necessary outside off stump and edging it away for Sutherland's third. We sort of buried the lead as well that Marizanne Kapp didn't play. She apparently fell sick yesterday, the day before the game, and was so ill that they were trying to figure out whether she was well enough to travel home to be sent back to South Africa. So we don't know exactly what the issue is with her, but she must have been very sick to be willing to be forced into missing a test match. So that's why Delmi Tucker was playing in the middle order. And then Tahlia McGrath comes on and doesn't actually bowl that well, but suddenly she's got 2 for 4. She gets Nadine de Klerk cutting one into the cordon, and Sinella Jafta, the keeper, gets a little feather on the toe of the bat, which she didn't even know that she hit. She reviewed it after she was given out, but she had hit it, and they were both rank short wide balls from McGrath in between all the ones going down the leg side, and despite bowling that way, suddenly she's got 2 wickets for 4 runs off the first 3 or 4 overs that she bowled. So 7 for 50 at that point, and then, like you said, Chloe Tryon going, okay, well, I might as well start trying to smash a few. And the first one she goes after, she drilled it. It was hard and flat, but straight at Perry at mid-off. So 8 down at lunch. They come back after lunch. Malaba falls in the first over after lunch, hits 1-4 down the ground, and then edges one into the cordon. And then, it was 19 runs added for the last wicket. There's a little Shamar Joseph flurry between Hulubi on debut, batting with Masabata Class, who whacked a few and was the only player aside from Ellyse to get into double figures. So all out for 76, 9 single-figure scores. And it's their lowest ever bowled out score. I mean, South African women, like I said, they haven't played a lot of test matches, but they've been bowled out in 18 of their test innings, and this was the lowest score they've ever made. So it was pretty dire stuff. And I mean, really, the surprise was that they came back and Class bowled so well off the top of the Australian innings and picked up 3 wickets for almost nothing.
And when Class started her spell, the first ball was down. Phoebe Litchfield's pads just went away. Did it go for 4? No, I don't think it went for 4.
Couple of leg buys, yeah.
A couple of leg buys. But you could see her reaction right after that ball. She wasn't so confident with that red ball. You could just see that she wasn't sure how much it was going to move. And then what she produced after that was great. And it's a great story as well. I mean, we had to wait a long time for this opportunity. She's a mother as well, and everything she's done, and it almost feels like she's got this second wind in her career. She really did set the cat amongst the pigeons for Australia. And it was classy bowling as well, right? Classy new ball bowling, getting Perry just like driving outside, with the outswinger, and then McGrath the same way as well. So at 3 for 12, they seemed in all sorts. But even before then, back to the South African innings, that 8 for 55, you thought they might get bowled out in one session, right? So one more wicket and they might have extended the lunch session, which doesn't happen very often in Test cricket. But yeah, I mean, like we've seen throughout this home summer with the men's Test, the 10th wicket partnership in for the opposition always seems to work. It did for Pakistan, it did for West Indies for sure, and another one that took South Africa from a pitiable state to, well, still a pitiable state, but at least made sure that they didn't get bowled out in one session. But at 3 for 12, you're like, ooh, 2 more wickets. But even before Healy and Mooney started her partnership, you still were aware of the depth of Australia, right? That's why every time you see them play Test cricket, you're like, oh, the batting lineup doesn't end. You have to go all the way down to Darcie Brown, and even she can throw her bat around. So you knew someone would bail them out, but like you said, it had to be Beth Mooney. It always is Beth Mooney.
Yeah, the Australian team, they're like the Hydra, right? You chop off a few heads and then a few other ones pop up in their place. But it was also a lack of discipline from the Australian batting. So, I mean, Litchfield runs one ball off the face of her bat through into a gap between gully and point. Risky sort of shot, managed to get it down just enough. I don't think it would have been catchable anyway. Picks up a boundary there and then gets a wide ball angled across her and almost on one knee sort of steers it with almost a horizontal bat into the cordon, like genuine slips catching practice kind of stuff, and gets caught. And then you've got Perry and McGrath driving at balls that they don't need to drive at, sort of attacking shots outside the off stump. So it was interesting so when Mooney and Healy came together, and bear in mind Healy's been keeping previously and then she's had to run in after about 5 overs to come into bat at number 5, which she wouldn't have been expecting. They come together and they said their conversation was put the cover drive away for a few overs, don't play any drives and just wait it out. They only really waited for about 5 or 6 overs though. Yeah. Like they just put their shots away for that 5 or 6 overs, had a look at it, waited until class had finished a spell. And then it's when the bowling changes. So de Klerk comes on and then Annika Bosch comes on and Mooney square drives her for 4. And that pretty much changes everything. Healy goes after them at that point, hits a couple of boundaries there, including from de Klerk as well. Mooney hits another one. And then suddenly Healy gets 3 boundaries in and over from Bosch. They're both on about 20. They're looking great. And they're playing, it's very offside. It's cover drives, it's cuts, late cuts. Anything that was pitched a bit short, which plenty was. And even when they bring Malabo on to bowl spin, she bowls too short and gets cut multiple times. They try bringing class back, but she goes for a couple of boundaries. There was that period there, Bharat, either side of the tea break, 13 overs in a row. There was at least one boundary every over for 13 overs between those two. And by the time that streak finishes, Healy and Mooney are both high 40s. They both bring up their 50s just after that. And, it felt like really it didn't matter what happened in the Australian innings from there. The game was in their control, even if things had fallen apart after that.
And that's when the drive fest starts, right? And again, it was the lack of experience or the inexperience of the South Africans coming through. We saw it with the bat, like you said. They felt a little overawed by the challenge of the swinging red ball. But with the ball, you need discipline, don't you? I mean, you need to kind of bowl dry overs. Even if, say, you're not getting that wicket after you've created a collapse early on or produced one. So, but yeah, those 13 overs really summed up why Test cricket is always challenged, regardless of whether it's men's or women's Test cricket. It's the big step up, right? Like you cannot... you speak to batters who come through the ranks. From a batting perspective, they'll always speak about the frequency of loose balls just reducing from one level to the other. And having to wait for a long time against quality attacks. Which South Africans felt like you spoke about Tasman Brits and her innings, where she waited and waited and waited. And when she didn't get a boundary ball, she went looking for one and got out. Or she got the in-swinger, but a lot of the other batters got out that way. Which didn't happen from the South African perspective. They were just easy pickings after a while. And that's how you build Test innings, don't you? I mean, Beth Mooney's done it across all formats. That's what she does. But it was good to see Alyssa Healy also get into the mix. She played a crucial hand in the Ashes last year at Trent Bridge. But this just felt like her being at her best in Test cricket anyway.
Yeah, she did. She wasn't having to fight for it. She played that kind of counter-attacking way that she does. She took them on. She played the pull shot. She was able to loft over mid-on and played those attacking kind of shots, not in a cavalier kind of way, but just in a calculated sort of way. So she brings up her 50 off about 59 balls, I think it was. Mooney was off about 80 balls. Slightly slower because she'd had to grind out more at the start when wickets were falling at the other end. They put on 155 together before Mooney edges into the cordon. Nadine de Klerk gets the wicket, Mooney for 78. But then it's the Annabel Sutherland show, and we saw her 100 in the Trent Bridge Test, and she played some lovely shots, played that on drive down the ground that she played. The crossbat shots were strong. So she's 54 not out by the close. But it was interesting when Delmi Tucker came on to bowl. She's a sort of all-rounder, bowls some off spin, and she came on very late in the day, but bowled a few overs. And I just thought she looks difficult to deal with here. Like the ball was holding up a little bit. She got a couple to really turn, and I was just interested every time she had the ball in her hand. I thought, well, something might just be happening here, and indeed. It does. Healy goes from 97 to 99 with a couple, and then she just gets a ball that dips on her a little, maybe gripped a bit, closes the bat face a bit early, pops up a leading edge, and Tucker takes a really good caught and bowled, having to tumble forward and across to her left to get there. Healy gone for 99 just before stumps. We'll come to some of that in the Hall of Fame in a second, but 251 for 5 is the Australian score. That lead is 175. But yeah, the Tucker intervention was interesting later in the day, given that Australia didn't need to use spin at all.
And kind of tells you that what everyone's been saying about that WACA pitch is true. You're right. As soon as she came on and was bowling slower than the other spinner, the ball was gripping. It wasn't easy to suddenly even the well-set Australian batters were struggling to just time the ball. Or not struggling, but didn't look as comfortable timing the ball as they were against the other bowlers. And I think that's the nature of this WACA pitch and the weather as well. The sun had really pounded down on that pitch, on that surface throughout the day. Whatever little moisture would have been there would have evaporated long before we got to that stage. And again, I'm sure we'll talk about the Healy finish or the Healy not scoring 100 in the Hall of Fame, but it was just a consolation for South Africa because the game already is moved on so far away from them. I mean, based on how they went in the first innings, Australia could well just declare now and finish the game off in another session. I mean, that's not how Test cricket plays out most times, but that's the kind of position Australia are in right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they call it off by lunch tomorrow, for instance, if they're still batting at that point. All right, let's go to the Hall of Fame. The Final Word Hall of Fame, where we pick our most final word moments of the day. Now, players getting out for 99, people are always interested in this. The real burn of that for Healy, I think, will be the ball beforehand on 97, pulls it out to deep mid-wicket. It was Tasman Brits, wasn't it? It came running around the boundary rope, slid, had her foot perilously near the rope as she taps the ball back in. And they stopped and looked at it for about 60 seconds, went back and forth over the angles, the slow-mo and all the rest of it. And Healy was sort of laughing about it. And eventually they rule that she saved the ball and tapped it back in, and that it's only 2 runs, so Healy's on 99. A couple of balls later, she gives up the catch. But I would have thought, as a batter, I think you would rather them just say that's 2 runs straight away and not make you wait for that minute to just stand around waiting to see whether you've got 100 or not, because if the foot's touching the rope, it's a ton. And then it isn't, and you've got to recompose. And I just wonder whether that was the thing that shook her concentration enough that meant that the wicket fell. It almost would have been in her interest to not have them look for the extra couple of runs and just accept that as 2 and go on and hit the next ball.
It was a nothing shot as well that she got out to, right? Gets the leading edge where she doesn't get to the length of the ball, another ball gripping from the spinner, Tucker, and then she closes the face of the bat a bit too early. And she wasn't even trying to force it through mid-wicket and there was a boundary fielder or a fielder on the boundary, so she would have got the single, but she's just turning her wrist. And you're right. I mean, in that, all it takes is that split second of concentration to just drop, right? And you could see her smiling, and she was very keen on the single of the next ball, pushed it into the covers, looked for a single, couldn't get it. And that's how these things work, don't they? And I mean, it is quite something that the first thing that I saw on social media is how both husband and wife now have the same highest test score, 1 short of 100.
They do actually, and yeah, as they pointed out on commentary, it was nice that came up on Valentine's Day as well. Although it's actually one day later, but a bit of creative license being taken there. I liked the fact that Darcie Brown was kept on. She bowled a huge full tossed way down the leg side that was called a no ball, so 5 no balls because it went to the fence. She bowls another one down the leg side that was perilously close. I mean, she could have been pulled out of the attack at that point, but they were 9 down, South Africa, and she had 4 for, and so Healy could have taken her off at that stage, but Healy left her on, and it's the next over where she bowls a much better ball, little wider on the crease, angles it in, gets through the number 11 and knocks over her leg stump and gets her 5-wicket haul. So I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that it was Beth Mooney in the heat again. I mean, we saw her with the ice collar in the WBBL final a few years ago, and she's one of the most pale, fair, complexioned kind of people who does not look built to be out in the blazing sun. So she was out there for most of the day batting when it was 43 degrees. And my last one is poor old Sophie Molyneux, who, knee injury, out for a year, stress fractures, out for another couple of years, last played in 2021, comes back into the squad, somehow pushes Jess Jonathan out of the test team, which is no mean feat. Jess Jonathan also has a test match 99 to her name, as well as her bowling skills. So Molyneux, she's back, she's playing test cricket, and she doesn't even get a bowl in the first innings because the other team get Rochambeau'd for nothing at all.
Oh, there is an outside chance that she doesn't get to bat in this innings and doesn't get to bowl in the second innings. So it
Thanks
could
for
be
coming.
I know, exactly. So that's how this game is headed. I love the Mooney thing as well. I think Megan Schutt's comment on Channel 7, I think, where she said our responsibility is to make sure that she doesn't turn into a tomato. And she nearly did look like she was turning into a tomato every time the camera panned onto her. But yeah, it was a gamble to bowl first on a hot day like that. But again, I think it was a very calculated gamble, and it has paid off for Australia. I don't know what we can expect tomorrow. I mean, it looks like this game will just continue to speed through. A lot of power hitters left for Australia to come. Gardner's just walked out. We all know how quick Annabel Sutherland scores. So they could, like you said, battle lunch and set this game up for an early finish.
Yeah, 100 in the session by lunchtime, and see if they could have it done in a couple of days and not have to come back when it's 40 degrees on day 3. All right. I think that is enough from us. The final word. Australia, South Africa, daily, the women's test from the WACA. The show's brought to you by CBUS Super. If you want to sort out your retirement, cbussuper.com.au. Check them out. Over 900,000 Australians have their super with CBUS. Past performance, not a reliable indicator of future performance. Geoff Lemon and Bharat Sundaresan will be back with you on day 2. See you then.